I will not catalogue every spell recorded in these texts. My lord has commissioned a history, not an inventory, and I have no intention of reading aloud from a ledger like a quartermaster with pretensions. But certain spells merit attention, not for their power, but for what they reveal about the practitioners who devise them. What I will do is follow the grimoire's own hierarchy, from the novice's earliest lessons to the mage's most dangerous arts. I find the progression instructive. A civilization may be judged by what it teaches first and by what it permits last. And so, I will begin where the sources themselves begin, at the bottom. The spell called Curse demands nothing of its caster but intent, no preparation, no recovery, a trivial measure of vital energy in a silver rune bowl, which I suspect most wizards carry as naturally as a soldier carries a canteen. The spell permits its caster to inflict upon any visible target within 12 paces warts, an outrageous accent, a green or mottled nose, baldness, or, and I record this precisely as written, a silly walk. I will pause here because I suspect my lord's patience is already being tested. But consider what this spell actually tells us. It is novice magic. This is what a wizard learns before he learns anything else. Not a ward, not a weapon, not a healing art, a petty cruelty. And one designed, the sources note, to serve as a useful source of revenue. The wizard curses you, then charges you to remove it. Or you seek out a wizard of greater mastery who charges you more. This is not magic in the service of civilization. This is a protection racket dressed in arcane vocabulary. And the fact that it appears at the very foundation of magical education tells us something the colleges would rather we not dwell upon. That the first instinct of the trained wizard is not to illuminate, but to exploit. I confess a grudging admiration for the honesty of it. From petty cruelty we ascend, if that's the right word, to martial application. The spell Bloodlust is acolyte work. It requires a philtre of fiery humors, perhaps 2 minutes of preparation, and a meaningful expenditure of the caster's vital reserves. What it purchases is simple. The subject is seized by an uncontrollable frenzy, compelled to charge the nearest enemy, and strikes with twice the force of their natural strength. The tactical appeal is obvious. A line of soldiers wavering before a superior force, their courage failing, and behind them a wizard with a silver flask and 2 minutes to spare. Suddenly the line does not waver. Suddenly the line charges. The field commander sees resolve. The soldiers themselves feel something they mistake for courage. Only the wizard knows what it actually is. I note, with professional interest, that the spell may be cast upon any creature within 12 paces, including the wizard himself. This implies a caster willing to surrender the very faculty that makes him useful. A wizard who drinks his own fiery humor and hurls himself screaming into melee has made a specific calculation about his prospects, and it is not an optimistic one. I know also that elves are exempt. The spell simply does not take. Whether this reflects some refinement of the elven constitution or merely a different relationship to rage, the texts do not say. I will return to the question of elven resistance in a future account when the sources give me more to work with. But what troubles me most is not the spell's effect. It is the position. This is acolyte magic, one step above the curse that gives a man warts. A student wizard, barely past his apprenticeship, can rob a soldier of his will and replace it with manufactured fury. The soldier fights harder. The soldier may well die harder. And the wizard needs no recovery afterward. I wonder whether the soldier is consulted. The sources do not say, and I suspect they do not say because the answer was not considered relevant. We move past petty curses and battlefield stimulants. We're now somewhere else entirely, and I confess the distance traveled unsettles me more than I had anticipated. This spell is called Summon Demons, Adept Work, the third rank of mastery, 2 minutes of preparation, and the cost, I read this several times to be certain, is a single measure of caster's vital energy. 1. The same price as giving a man warts. What it purchases is between 2 and 12 lesser demons summoned through what the texts describe only as a kin familiar. I described this object in my earlier account of the wizard's instruments as benign. I recorded it with something like relief. I should like that relief back, please. The word kin is doing a great deal of work in that phrase, and none of it is reassuring. The demons are described with a brevity I might admire under other circumstances. They are, the sources state, of an evil and malicious disposition who enjoy only one thing, killing people. That is the full characterization. No theology, no taxonomy of the infernal, no account of where they come from, what sustains them, or what claims they might carry back with them when the killing is done. They enjoy killing people. They will attack any unit the wizard designates, and when the wizard's enemies are dead, they turn on the nearest living troops, including, one must assume, the wizard's own side. I want to be precise about what disturbs me here because the disturbance is not where one might first look for it. It is not the demons themselves. Any scholar of the arcane encounters references to the demonic, old warnings, theological arguments, and the usual apparatus of institutional caution. What disturbs me is the clerical tone. These creatures are recorded with the same dispassion as the curse, the same mechanical specificity as bloodlust. Preparation, 2 minutes. Cost, negligible. Remarks, they enjoy killing people, as though this were a logistical consideration rather than an eschatological one. The sources have domesticated the demonic, not tamed it. The demons remain uncontrollable once their designated targets are spent, but normalized it. Filed it in a sequence between a spell that makes soldiers fight harder and whatever follows in the next entry. A wizard preparing for battle might weigh the merits of bloodlust against summoned demons the way a general weighs cavalry against infantry. A tactical question, not a moral one. And the cost. I return to this because I can't leave it alone. 1 measure of vital energy. A wizard who summons a dozen entities of pure malice from beyond the veil of the aether expends the same effort as a wizard who gives a man a silly walk. Either the sources are wrong or the barrier between our world and whatever world these things inhabit is so thin that it costs almost nothing to open. I do not know which possibility I find less bearable. My Lord will forgive me if I observe that this is the first entry in these texts where I felt the need to set down the page and compose myself before continuing, not because the content is beyond scholarly endurance, I've read worse, but because the format is. Horror should not sit neatly in a ledger. It should not be reducible to columns in the Arcanist catalogue. The moment we can quantify the demonic and the moment we have decided is the moment we've decided it's manageable, and I'm not at all certain that that is a decision we survive. It gets worse. The Balrog is classified as a greater demon, a designation that implies a hierarchy I would prefer not to contemplate, but which the sources present as settled fact. They are, we are told, the twisted forms of lesser deities. I will ask my Lord to read that phrase again. Not corrupted mortals, not spirits of malice given shape. Deities. Lesser ones, yes, but gods all the same. Broken and remade into something that serves no purpose but destruction. The spell that summons them is mage work. The highest rank of mastery these sources recognize. 10 measures of vital energy. The greatest cost we have yet encountered. and the first time these texts seem to acknowledge that what is being attempted carries genuine weight. 4 minutes of sustained incantation, the same kin familiar, and a restriction that stopped me cold. The spell can only be cast by an evil wizard. This is the first moral boundary the sources have drawn. A wizard may curse an innocent man for profit. He may strip a soldier of his will and hurl him frothing into combat. He may tear open whatever membrane separates our world from the realm of lesser demons, all without ethical qualification. But this requires that the caster has already crossed a line the sources have until now not bothered to define. Evil, it seems, is not a spectrum in these texts. It is a threshold, and it is set remarkably high. My lord would, I suspect, caution me against assuming that what is lesser is therefore negligible. He has shown a particular attentiveness to the subject of fallen powers, an attentiveness I have not yet fully understood, but which I have learned to respect. But it is not the spell's restrictions that unsettle me. It is the assumptions. The Balrog, unlike the lesser demons, is not summoned from elsewhere. It has, the sources are explicit, physical form, and a material existence. It is already here. The spell does not open a door, it sends a call, and something that is already nearby, that has been nearby beneath the earth perhaps for centuries, answers. The sources then assess the likelihood. Underground, there's a 1 in 2 chance of a Balrog being within a short march of the summoner. On the surface, the same odds, but at a greater distance. Direction is determined by whatever caprice governs such things. I must be very clear about what is being described. The authors of these texts estimated the likelihood of a fallen god being within walking distance of any given point. They have determined that beneath the surface of the world, beneath our cities, our colleges, our temples, there is, at any moment, roughly a coin flip's chance that something made from the ruin of a deity is right there, not sealed, not imprisoned, simply present, going about whatever business a twisted god goes about in the dark. And we go about ours above, in the light, and do not know. The spell may only be cast once per day. I note this limitation with the grim certainty that it exists because someone at some point attempted it twice, and what that day must have looked like I leave to my lord's imagination. Mine has done enough. I had intended to maintain the structural pattern I've established: spell, rank, cost, observation, a scholar's rhythm. It has served me well through the curses and frenzies and demons and fallen gods. What follows broke the pattern, and it broke something in me, I think, that I had not known was load-bearing. The spell is mage work, the same rank as the Balrog summoning. It costs 3 measures of vitality. For each minute it is sustained, modest, sustainable, the kind of expenditure a wizard could maintain for some time without exhaustion. It requires 1 minute's preparation and a silver rune bowl, the same talisman used to give a man warts. The target is granted a chance to resist, though the sources concede that ordinary victims are unlikely to manage it. Elves, heroes, and other figures of exceptional well-being will fare somewhat better. Undead, demons, and deities are immune entirely, which tells us something about the nature of the spell. It requires a living will to override, and where there is no will, there is nothing to seize. The spell is called mind control, and the sources provide an example of its use. I will not reproduce that example in full, and what I will say is this. The sources chose, as their illustrative case, a wizard commanding a victim to stab himself, repeatedly, with the escalating insistence. And the victim's responses are recorded not as words, but as sounds. The sounds a man makes when his own hand is doing what his own mind is screaming at it to stop doing. The sources found this amusing. Their tone is unmistakable. This is a joke. I said earlier that I admired honesty. I take it back. I did not flinch at any of what came before. This is different. This is not a failure of tone or a lapse in institutional caution. This is the sources telling me who they are. And who they are is this: people for whom the absolute dominion of one mind over another, the erasure of a man's will, the use of his own body as the instrument of his own destruction, is a demonstration exercise, a worked example, something to raise a smile between one entry and the next. I think about the soldier from the bloodlust entry, the one who was not consulted. At least his frenzy pointed him at the enemy. At least his rage, however manufactured, served a purpose beyond the wizard's entertainment. The victim of mind control serves no purpose at all. He's not a weapon, he's not a tool, he's a performance, a demonstration of what the wizard can do, staged for no audience but the wizard himself. And yet, I must note, because the scholar in me will not permit silence on the point, that a chance to resist exists. 1 chance in 6 for an ordinary man. Better odds for the strong-willed. The sources did not have to include that. A spell of total domination need not come with an escape clause, but they gave the victim a sliver, as if to say, yes, you are almost certainly doomed, but the architecture of the world permits you a fragment of defiance. I do not know whether that is mercy or the final cruelty, the suggestion that resistance is possible, offered at odds that make it nearly meaningless. I suspect my lord will read this passage with less alarm than I write it. He has, I think, a longer familiarity with the question of what one will may do to another, and what it costs, and what it is for. I do not envy him the knowledge. The demons, at least, have the decency to kill you. I have one final entry, and then I will set down my pen. I have earned the silence, I think. And now, at last, I learn what the golden time glass is for. I encountered this object once before, in the inventory of enchanted items, and could make nothing of it. A golden hourglass of evident arcane significance, catalogued without explanation. Its purpose deferred to texts I had not yet reached. I noted it, I moved on. I have learned, in this commission, that patience with incomplete sources is not optional. The time glass is a talisman. It is required for a spell of the mage's rank called Manipulate Time, and what it does is very simple. It stops the world. The wizard who casts this spell steps into a state where time moves only for him. Everything else, every soldier, every demon, every arrow in flight, every beating heart and every chest on the field is frozen. The wizard alone moves. The wizard alone acts. He may walk amongst his enemies and strike them, and they cannot raise a hand in their own defense. For each minute he spends in this state, 3 measures of his vitality drain away. He may sustain it for no more than 6 minutes, after which the spell ends, and time resumes whether he wills it to or not. But there is a cost beyond vitality, and it is this. While time is stopped, magic ceases to function. All of it. Enchanted weapons go dull. Magical items lose their power. Current spells, including, one assumes, any protections the wizard has placed on himself, simply stop. The wizard who steps outside of time is stripped of everything that makes him a wizard. He's returned to what it was before the colleges, before the training, before the first syllable of the first incantation. He's just a man, alone in a world that's not moving. I find this clarifying. Every spell I've examined today has been, in one form or another, an exercise in power over others. The curse humiliates, the bloodlust overrides, demons destroy, a Balrog devastates. Mind control, I will not revisit mind control. But this spell does not grant power over others. It removes the wizard from their company entirely. For 6 minutes, perhaps less, he exists in a world emptied of everything except himself, and the consequences of what he chooses to do in the silence. and his enemies cannot fight back. I want to be precise about this because the tactical literature would call this an extraordinary advantage, and it is. But it is also something else. A man who strikes another man in battle, however brutal the act, exists in a relationship. There is risk, there is resistance, there's the possibility, however remote, that the other man strikes back. The wizard in Stop Time has none of this. What he does is not combat. It is visitation. He moves amongst the frozen, like a figure from a dream they will not remember having. And when time resumes, the men who were alive are simply dead, and no one saw the blade. I think this is the loneliest magic I have encountered. Not the darkest, that distinction belongs elsewhere in today's account, and I will not revisit it, but the loneliness. The loneliest. A wizard who stops time has, for the duration of the spell, no world, no allies, no enemies, no context, just himself, a blade that is merely a blade, and the sound of his own breathing in a silence that nothing else shares. 6 minutes, then the clock resumes, and he is among people again, and they do not know where he has been. I confess I had expected the golden time-glass to be something more dramatic, a weapon of grand spectacle, perhaps, befitting its place among the great enchanted objects. Instead, it is a key to an empty room. The wizard steps inside, does what he must, and steps out again, and the room ceases to exist. And no one will ever see it. No one will ever know what it felt like to stand there. I think there are men who would use this spell and never speak of it afterward, not from guilt, from the simple impossibility of explaining what it is to be the only living thing in the world, even for a minute, especially to a patron as patient as mine.